Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. So let me make sure my mic and everything else is working. This one is not going to be too long, but I did want to come back and have a conversation about the Nunes Memo. My levels went down. Alright, there we go. And that's why I do the mic check. And yes, I'm moving and shaking. So I wanted to discuss the Nunes Memo. I've read through the memo. I've seen a few of the things that other people said about it. I wanted to get my perspective on it. To me, this goes beyond just the memo. We have a magnificent issue in this country in regards to the surveillance state that we've instituted and that we've allowed to fester in the way that it's festered. They're going to a secret court, and the only person who's having that conversation is a judge that is listening to a prosecutor or some law enforcement agent that wants to surveil you for some particular reason. They're looking at you for something. There is no part of you in that process. That's purely the government, some aspect of the government, some secret tribunal where that particular person is the sole deciding factor on whether or not they're going to bypass whatever rights to the Fourth Amendment that you had left. This is immensely problematic. Where is the bellwether in this? Where is the thing that's the thing between you and unfair surveillance? I don't see it. 99.7% of those FISA warrants are approved. Let me repeat that. 99.7% of FISA warrants are approved. For all intents and purposes, any agent that wants to surveil another person can surveil that person at least 99.7% of the time. You could surveil a ham sandwich if you wanted to, according to this. This is problematic. They can literally do this to each and every person in this country. You can make a case on this planet, but definitely in this country, including the President of the United States. This issue goes beyond the Nunes Memo. This issue goes into what this country has become in regards to the security state. This kind of surveillance state in which each and every person is under suspicion, each and every person is recorded, each and every person, for the most part, can have their Fourth Amendment rights stripped away at a whim by some secret judge given information that we have no idea the information that the judge was given. It's all a secret. This is immensely problematic. This is immensely problematic. If you're going to tell me about the land of the free, the home of the brave, the liberty, they are surveilling people using secret courts to do it. That is fucking amazing. The entire process of this depends on the integrity of the process. Meaning you have to full well believe that the judge that you're going to get in some secret room somewhere, in some secret building that you have no access to, that your lawyers have no access to, is going to be fair to you in his appraisal of the information that's being given to him by some law enforcement person. Why on earth would anyone honestly believe that? With a rate of 99.7%, pretty much anything that they bring, the judge rubber stamps it. The judge is just a formality. It's just a formality. When we're having this conversation about the Nunes Memo, a lot of this, the sparring on this, boils down to put it as succinctly as I can possibly put it. They're bringing information saying, we need to surveil this particular person, Carter Page. We need to surveil Carter Page. Now, in surveilling Carter Page, they say the reasons why we need to surveil Carter Page is X, Y, and Z. They give reasons. The problem with that is that a lot of those reasons were missing, meaning they left out context. So for them to say, hey, we have this information about this guy and we need to look because we think this guy may be a Russian agent, and not telling the judge this information was recovered from a Steele dossier that was paid for by a Clinton campaign, that's a big fucking deal to leave out in regards to your information that you're giving across. If you're not telling them that, you found somebody whose wife got a ton of money, that's a lot to leave out. That's a lot to leave out. To not tell the judge that there are people working on the campaign that were fired that had clear biases that were overt in the way that they behaved in the campaign. That's a problem. That's a problem. And not campaign, investigation. They left out details. Now, the Republicans' point is, if those details was added into the mix, the FISA judge, if he was of good competence and good sense, would not have approved the spying on Carter Page. The problem with that logic is that while they're perfectly right that if there was any fairness to the process, if there was any honesty or integrity into the process, if there was any level of protection for the American public in the process, then yes, they may be right. But with a 99.7% rate at which they would allow these warrants, it wouldn't have mattered. It wouldn't have mattered. They could have left out, they could have added all of those details in. They have a 99.7%. Is he going to be the 0.3% that the judge, for whatever reason, turns down? Why would I believe that to be true? So understand what I'm saying. There is no protection for the American citizen in this particular context. Some law enforcement agent decides he wants to fuck with you for whatever reason. Maybe you're guilty, maybe you're not. Maybe this guy's having a bad day. Maybe this guy's just a shitty person. Maybe this guy is actually right today in the person that he picked up. In either case, it doesn't really matter. That judge, more likely than not, is going to give him permission to surveil and take your information. Fuck the Fourth Amendment. Fuck the Fourth Amendment. It's fucking amazing. I mean, you're reading this memo and they're like, we don't want this information out. We don't want we don't want people to see how we're surveilling the public in this way. We don't want them to see that for the most part, people can look at any of their information with the rubber stamp of a judge. That's literally what took place. Now, I understand the Republicans' argument. They left out details that should have been added. This was clearly a biased operation. The information that they gave was cut a particular way to make it more likely than not to give them the permission to go in or get the FISA warrant. I get it. I get it. And yes, maybe if there was a real bellwether there, maybe if there was a real process that protected the American citizens, maybe if there was some arbiter for the person who's at the subject of this particular investigation. None of those things are true, however. You have some random judge, and you have somebody who's coming in who wants to either lock you up, put something on you, or investigate you for some reason. And you have a judge that's just going to rubber stamp that investigation. Let's take a look at the memo. I understand why somebody would be annoyed by this, or why people would be pissed by this. And when Trump said they wiretapped him, yeah, they wiretapped him. They literally wiretapped him. The argument is the information that they were given left out on purpose in order to get the FISA judge to approve that particular thing? If that makes sense. Meaning, if they said the Steele dossier was paid for by the Clinton campaign, would the judge have still approved the warrant? Would he have found sufficient evidence to prove it? This is The Guardian. Let's see. All right, so the first part is essentially we had fact-finding, and these are the things that are left out. The dossier compiled by, let's see if I can make this bigger. The dossier compiled by Christopher Steele on behalf of the Democratic National Committee and Hillary Clinton campaign formed an essential part of the Carter Page FISA application. Steele was a longtime FBI source who was paid over $160,000 by the DNC and Clinton campaign via the law firm Perkins Cole and research firm Fusion GPS to obtain derogatory information on Donald Trump's ties to Russia. Neither the initial application on October 2016 nor any of the renewals, disclosure, or reference the role of the DNC, Clinton campaign, or any party campaign in funding Steele's efforts, even though the political origins of the Steele dossier were then known to senior Department of Justice and FBI officials. They knew this, each petition, because they had to do it every 90 days. They knew this. They didn't disclose this. That's their point. Let's keep going. The initial FISA application notes Steele was working for a named U.S. person, but does not name Fusion GPS and Principal Glenn Simpson, who was paid by a United States law firm, Perkins Cole, representing the DNC, although it was known to the Department of Justice at the time that political actors were involved in the Steele dossier. The application does not mention Steele was ultimately working on behalf of and paid by the DNC and the Clinton campaign, or that the FBI had separately authorized payments to Steele for the same information. Why was the FBI paying somebody? Essentially, FBI is paying the same person that the DNC was paying to get the same information. That's amazing. That's bizarre, but let's keep going. The Carter Page FISA application also cited extensively a 2016 Yahoo News article by Michael Isikoff, which focuses on Page's 2016 trip to Moscow. The article does not corroborate the Steele dossier because it is derived from information leaked by Steele himself to Yahoo News. The Page FISA application incorrectly assesses that Steele did not directly provide information to Yahoo News. Steele has admitted in the British court filings that he met with Yahoo News and other several outlets in September 2016 at the direction of Fusion GPS. Perkins Cole was aware of Steele's initial media contacts because they hosted at least one meeting in Washington, D.C. in 2016 with Steele and Fusion GPS where the matter was discussed. They're making a point that they're referencing material, but all the material was originating from one source. It's as if it's like when Dick Cheney would, people in the offices of Dick Cheney would talk to the news. Once he talked to the news, those sources would come back and say, we've heard sources in the news that said XYZ. Anonymous sources in the department or in the White House says this. Dick Cheney would then go out on the news and reference the article that references information anonymously from his own source. It's like you're using your own source of information in order to reference itself. I hope that makes sense. Let's keep going. Steele was suspended and then terminated as an FBI source for what the FBI defines as the most serious of violations, an unauthorized disclosure to the media of his relationship with the FBI in October 2016. Mother Jones' article by David Korn. Steele should have been terminated for his previous undisclosed contacts with Yahoo and other outlets in September before the Page application was submitted. They're using sources, but all of these sources are coming from one source. They're not multiply corroborated. It's one source, and that source was paid for by the DNC. Before Steele was terminated, a source he maintained contacted with the Department of Justice via the then Associate Deputy Attorney General Bruce Orr, a senior DOJ official who worked closely with Deputy Attorney General Yates and later Rosenstein. Shortly after the election, the FBI began interviewing Orr, documenting his communications with Steele. For example, in September 2016, Steele admitted to Orr his feelings against then-candidate Trump when Steele said he was desperate that Donald Trump did not get elected and was passionate about him not being president. This is clear evidence of Steele's bias was recorded by Orr at the time of the subsequently in official FBI files, but not reflected in the FISA application. Essentially, they're talking to this guy. They're getting information from this guy. They're using this information as a source to come up with an investigation for Trump and to get a FISA warrant to spy on the Trump campaign. At the exact same time, they're not disclosing that this guy was paid by the DNC, and they're not disclosing that this guy has gotten across a clear and overt bias. Let's keep going. During the same period, Orr's wife was employed by Fusion GPS to assist in the cultivation of opposition research on Trump. Orr later provided the FBI with all of his wife's opposition research paid for by the DNC and Clinton campaign via Fusion GPS. The Orr's relationship with Steele and Fusion GPS was inexplicably concealed by FISA, or by the FICS. Alright, there's more to this. I don't want to go, well, there's only two more. According to the head of FBI's Counterintelligence Division, Assistant Director Bill Prestat, cooperation of the Steele dossier was in its infancy at the time of the initial Page FISA application. After Steele was terminated, a source validation report conducted by an independent unit within the FBI assesses Steele's reporting as only minimally corroborated. Yet, in early 2017, Director Comey briefed President-elect Trump on a summary of the Steele dossier, even though it was, according to his June 2017 testimony, salacious and unverified. While the FISA application relied on Steele's past record of credible reporting on other unrelated matters, it ignored or concealed his anti-Trump financial and ideological motivations. That's amazing! That's amazing! Furthermore, Deputy Director McCabe testified before the committee in December 2017 that no surveillance warrant would have been sought from FICS without the Steele dossier information. That is amazing! That is amazing! the information that they had was being held. Essentially, they were withholding information from the FISA court. And knowing this guy had a clear bias, knowing this guy had a financial motive, noting this guy did not want Trump in that office, explicitly said he did not want Trump in that office, and knowing that this information wasn't cooperated, meaning they knew it wasn't cooperated. They said it wasn't cooperated. It was in its infancy of cooperation. Comey himself, salacious and unverified. And yet, they used this as a pretext in order to create that investigation, even though it was completely unverified. They went with this idea that, well, this guy gave us previous information in the past that was good, so we're going to give him the benefit of the doubt and assume that the information we're getting here, even though it's salacious and unverified, and we're going to get a warrant to investigate Donald Trump. That's amazing. That's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. Wow. That's brutal. That is so brutal. And then to say no FISA warrant would have been sought if it wasn't for the Steele dossier, even though that dossier was unverified and uncooperated, by the way. I can see why Democrats wouldn't want this out. I can see why the FBI wouldn't want this out. This is either incompetence or bias. I don't know which one it is. You make your choice. It could be a little bit of both. The page it's bias. The page FISA application also mentions information regarding fellow Trump campaign advisor George Papadopoulos, but there is no evidence of any cooperation or conspiracy between Page and Papadopoulos. The Papadopoulos information triggered the opening of an FBI counterintelligence investigation in late 2016 by FBI Peter Strzok's. Strzok's was reassigned by Special Counsel's Office to FBI resources for improper text messaging his mistress, FBI attorney Lisa Page. Both demonstrated clear bias against Trump in favor of Clinton, whom Strzok's had also investigated. Strzok's is the guy who was in the Clinton investigation that got Comey to change the information or change the report in a way that essentially downgraded what was being said. Meaning, the original way the report was written could have potentially brought charges. There were potentially federal criminal charges associated with the way Comey or the report was originally written. Strzok's changed to it, or his influence on it, changed the reporting, changed the language to something, I think, negligent versus like criminally negligent, something to that effect. My point is, he's working on two sides. In one case, he's on the Clinton investigation, making sure Clinton is not perp-walked. In the other case, he's working on the Donald Trump side, making sure that this investigation goes through. Even though, again, a clear bias. A clear bias. They're making a point that this stuff was known. This stuff was known. The Strzok's Lisa Page text also reflects extensive discussions about the investigation, orchestrating leaks to the media and including a meeting with Deputy Director McCabe to discuss an insurance policy against President Trump's election. Their point is, and I think it's a good point, this wasn't given to the FISA court. This was withheld. This was withheld. I got to be honest, that's problematic. If that information was available and that information was intentionally withheld, knowing that if that information was given, that it would have shown a clear bias and a clear lack of data or lack of pretext to come up with an investigation like this. That's problematic. That's problematic. This looks bad. This looks extremely bad. This is RT. They're talking about the memo being released. And I want you to hear what they're saying. The guy that's on here is a CIA whistleblower. And he's saying that top officials in the Department of Justice and the FBI has committed felonies in what they were doing, essentially withholding information from the FISA judge. Let's take a look.
We begin with news. President Trump has declassified the much-anticipated Nunes Memo, a document compiled by the staff of the House Intelligence Committee chair. The document reveals the FBI sought approval from the FISA, or Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, to electronically surveil Trump campaign advisor Carter Page. In the application, the FBI presented information from the infamous Steele dossier, according to the memo, a collection of opposition research compiled by a former British spy on behalf of the Clinton campaign. The memo suggests Steele's ties to the Clinton campaign, as well as the political bias of several members of the FBI and Justice Department involved in the investigation, were not properly disclosed to the FISA court. For more, let's turn to CIA whistleblower Ray McGovern. Welcome to the show, Ray. Always nice to see you.
Thank you.
The Democrats are calling this memo a big nothing burger, and they claim Papadopoulos was actually the person of interest who triggered the investigation, not Carter Page. Is this the case?
That's one of these urban legends. Papadopoulos came into the scene very late, after all this had already happened. What seems to be afoot here is that they got the Australians to spin this yarn that it was Papadopoulos who was responsible for all this nuisance stuff. And in fact, we know from the record, and the record, of course, is highly classified, so it'll have to be sanitized before it all comes together. We know from the record that it was otherwise. And, you know, I don't know what's going to happen now to Adam Schiff and Nancy Pelosi. And they really were out of their gourd about this yesterday, saying that, you know, there should be changes in the House Intelligence Committee, that Mr. Nunez should quit and all that.
Right.
You know? And now it's shown that the top officials of the FBI and the Department of Justice committed felonies. I mean, it's a felony to go to a FISA court and use incomplete or erroneous information. That's precisely what they did.
Well, Senator John McCain released his...
Right there. That's fucking important. It is illegal to go to a FISA court and give them incomplete information. It's like me having a feud with my neighbor. And let's say, it's like me having a feud with my neighbor. And I go to the judge, for whatever reason, somehow I get to the judge. I have some kind of FBI contact. And the FBI goes to get some kind of search warrant in order to surveil my neighbor just because I'm being an asshole and I have this guy in the FBI. And he tells the FISA court, look, we saw Bob having a talk with Tom, and we think Tom sells pot or something like that. If the prosecutor doesn't reveal that the information that he got from him was from me, who's having some issue with my neighbor and has reason to kind of be antagonistic towards my neighbor, you've misled that judge. That judge is going from this idea that the officer who's given them information is some paragon of virtue and is at the very least being honest in the way that he's given him information, is given him full context. This is my fundamental issue with this court. There is no arbiter in the sense of the public itself. There is no public person. There is no defense of anything else. It's somebody who wants to surveil you, and it's a judge who's willing to rubber stamp it. And the judge is purely just taking the perspective of the person who actually wants to do something, and who wants to undermine your Fourth Amendment rights, or who wants to go after you for some criminal matter. These guys didn't give the judge full context. Now, the question becomes, it's a different question on whether it would have mattered. I mean, there's a 99.7%, stamp rate. It's a rubber stamp. I don't even know why they have a judge. They just put a robot there. I mean, so whether it would have mattered is a separate question. It is a big deal, however, that they did not give a full context to the judge who they were giving the information to. Whether the judge would have proved it or not is kind of besides the point. You still can't lie, even if it's a lie of omission to the judge, particularly if that lie was intentional and you know that that was a big fucking deal. I'm putting the memo at the bottom so you can see it. Read it for yourself. It's a lot of stuff they left out. It's a lot of stuff they left out. So imagine going to somebody saying, we need a search warrant on this guy. Why do you need a search warrant for the guy? Well, we think that there's connections between this person and that person. Where did you get this information from? There's a CIA guy who got this information from. Great. If I don't say that that guy was paid for by his opposition, if I don't say that there were problems with the guy's story and the guy's story couldn't be corroborated, if I don't explain that this guy hates the person who he's spilling the beans on and has said so openly, and there's a record of this, then I've lied to that judge. And that judge is giving me a FISA warrant under some false pretense. Let's keep going. I agree with him. Whether there are going to be consequences or not is a separate question. Democrats can moan and bitch all they want. The memo is there for you to read.
Own reaction to the memo, stating, quote, the latest attacks on the FBI and Department of Justice serve no American interests, no parties, no presidents, only Putin's. The American people deserve to know all of the facts surrounding Russia's ongoing efforts to subvert our democracy, which is why Special Counsel Mueller's investigation must proceed. Do you think Putin really cares about this?
Do I think what?
Putin really cares about this?
Well, I see Putin sitting back and kind of being just kind of amused at the whole business. For McCain to be saying those things is, well, it would be more ridiculous were he not on record as having said that the so-called Russian hack into the DNC, giving the stuff to WikiLeaks, that was an act of war by Russia. Well, you know, hello. Number one, we know it wasn't a hack. There was no hack. And number two, if you're going to have an act of war, why don't you have the FBI look at the machines that were supposed to have been hacked? He never did that.
Right.
Yeah, again, making perfect sense. It's not a leak. It's a hack. I mean, it's not a hack. It's a leak. The reports that was coming out showed that the speed at which those files were being downloaded don't match a hack. It was physically impossible for it to be a hack, meaning you can measure how fast the information was being pulled from the servers themselves, and the speed at which it was being pulled was more commensurate with somebody who's just downloading something to like a drive, as opposed to somebody else pulling or extracting their information over some kind of wire. So yes, he's right on that point. Vladimir Putin doesn't care, or at least not from the standpoint of, you know, this is the America eating itself. Yeah, let me keep going. He's right.
So they're pretty desperate here, and those people on record as supporting this Russiagate legend, Mark Twain said once that it's a lot more difficult to persuade people that they've been deceived than it is to deceive people. 80% of the Americans have been deceived into thinking the Russians played some kind of role in our last election. Now, to undeceive them, they're going to need a media. And the media is going to be John McCain-ish here, saying, oh, no, this is all wrong, even though it's supported by documents from the Department of Justice and the FBI.
Right, and the media's wall-to-wall coverage of Russiagate contributes, in fact, to the Americans' perception.
Exactly.
And by the way, there's another point on that. The media has, for what, a year and a half now, has screamed at the top of their lungs about Russia. Hillary Clinton loses the election. Democrats flip out. On Huffington Post, I think she had a 98% chance of winning on the day that she lost the election. Think about that. So I'm trying to paint the context of the bubble that these guys were in, thinking that this is a lock. I don't even have to visit some states. This is a lock. And having all of these hillbots walking around thinking the same thing. Well, the chips in their head short-circuited. They had no paradigm with which to understand why their candidate, the most awesomest candidate in the history of the world, the most best candidate, the most qualified candidate in any universe, how that person could fail so miserably to a reality show host at that. They needed something else in which to add to that process. Hillary Clinton, being a megalomaniac, did not want to deal with the fact that she failed miserably, particularly not to a reality show host. And Trump and Russia was an easy way for her to avoid this particular damage and for Democrats to kind of try to obfuscate that particular issue. Meaning they didn't want to deal with the issues of why they failed, why they lost, the problems with the party. They don't want to deal with the fact that they're so bought and sold by their corporate donors that these guys have turned into some kind of robots. None of that stuff. They don't want to talk about any of that. Her campaign pushed this notion of Trump and Russia. Democrats screamed Trump and Russia. And all of them acted in unison as if a foreign power somehow hacked this government, using the term hacked as being ambiguous so they won't necessarily define their terms. The media ran with it. Uncritically, the media ran with it. And for a year and a half, putting asses in seats, they fill their media, they fill their airways. Trump and Russia. Trump was a gold mine. whether it was a gold mine from the standpoint of him just being a reality show host as a candidate who they didn't think he was going to win, or him being a president and being somewhat of a punching bag in the sense of this guy was having sex with Vladimir Putin on a bear rug, you know, that type of stuff. Just all sorts of salacious stuff. But the media followed this. They went with the narrative. And not just went with the narrative, they towed that water consistently for a year and a half, being so animated about trying to find something on him, trying to find something to kind of make all of this conspiracy theory come together, make any of this stuff true to any degree, that one time after the next, they would fuck up their story. So they would say something like, oh, we got it, we got it. Joy Behar screaming at the top of her lungs, this kind of freedom, this Mel Gibson scream of freedom, like, yes, we got him, we got him, we got the smoking gun. Oh, it's not the smoking gun. Oh, okay, I was just ecstatic that the President of the United States was caught and would be impeached. I was just ecstatic. I was happy about that. I was so excited. The fuck-ups only ever go one way. Against Donald Trump. They're looking for something. They're actively looking for something. And do you honestly believe that after a year and a half that they will be screaming at the top of their lungs about this and have nothing to show for it, and there's still something to this issue? This is a conspiracy theory. This is a conspiracy theory. They needed this conspiracy theory to understand, to have something in their paradigm to help them understand the reality to which their candidate lost. They fall in line for this because it allows them to assuage their understanding of reality. Oh, she didn't lose because she was a horrible candidate. She lost because of Trump and Russia. Democrats scream it. They don't want to deal with their own issues. So you have a public that's somewhat motivated for this idea of Trump and Russia, but each of these people have their own reasons for wanting the Trump and Russia thing. The problem with this is they haven't shown anything. This connection did not exist. And the investigation that they're using for this is falling the fuck apart. They built this off of something that was biased to its core. And in building something that's biased to its core, the agents themselves left out the information that would reveal the fact that it was biased to its core to the FISA judge. Again, whether the FISA judge would have accepted it or not is kind of besides the point. The point of this is they lied to the FISA judge. They did not give him the information that would allow proper context to realize that the information that he was being shown and given was opposition research. These guys were being politicized. This apparatus, the surveillance state, was being politicized. This issue goes beyond just Nunez and this memo and Trump. What is the country that you want? Do you really want some kind of Stasi in the United States, or the United States version of a Stasi that's surveilling everything and has everybody under surveillance, and at any moment, any random agent can drag you into a room or surveil your information from you? This is fucking amazing. This is fucking amazing. This issue goes beyond that, but in this very specific case, yes, they have a point.
Right.
On this story, the Steele dossier was, of course, funded by sources close to the Clinton campaign. Why was this information excluded from the FISA court, application? And what does it say about the FISA court process?
Well, the FISA court process has been largely a kind of a travesty of justice, literally. Early on, after it was set up in the late 70s, it seemed to be doing a pretty good job. But lately...
Oh, one last point. I'm sorry, I completely forgot that part. The servers. He's right. The DNC, the media, have been telling us that the FBI, CIA, and NSA are, for all intents and purposes, the words of God. That if they say something, God damn it, that's just the way it is. It is reality. These people are paragons of virtue. These people are apolitical. These people don't lie. These people tell the truth. They have crosses on their chests. If they say it, it is the word of God. They've told us this continuously, at least over the past time with this investigation with Trump and Russia. Now, the DNC gets hacked. Or is leaked, but they scream hacked. They say that they were hacked. And they don't go to the FBI. This thing that they've told us is a paragon of virtue, is the word of God. They don't go to the FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigations. Federal, it's in the name, Bureau of Investigations. Now, you would think that if you got hacked, you would just go to the agency of the United States that has a responsibility of dealing with issues such as that, meaning the FBI. Why didn't the DNC take their service to the FBI? Why did the DNC go through the trouble of paying an agency to review their servers? This cash-strapped, burning building of a corporation dredges up enough cash to go through some other agency as opposed to using the FBI, which is the most natural course in the world. It's a little weird. It's a little weird. We're hacked. We're hacked. No. We don't want to go through the FBI. We want to pay for somebody else to look at our machines.
We know, for example, that out of the 37,000 FISA requests, all but 8 were approved, so it's been a rubber stamp. So for the FBI and the DOJ to serve up incomplete justifications, which is a felony, okay, they thought they'd get away with it. And not only because nobody holds them accountable, but because, after all, Hillary was a shoo-in. I mean, that's lies at the bottom of all this stuff. If you're going to commit felonies, well, you can always rest assured you'll never be caught, or you'd never be convicted, or be, brought before a trial.
Or at least
if Hillary wins.
At least that's what they thought. We have about 30 seconds left. The Democrats say Andrew McCabe's testimony was mischaracterized in this memo. Should they release his testimony to clear the air?
Of course they should. These things are documents, and they should be released. And McCabe, it's very interesting that as soon as McCabe's boss saw the memo, what do? He told McCabe, don't come to work on Monday morning. Don't stay home. What does that tell you?
McCabe was the one whose wife got, what, $50,000 or just a ton of money to run in one of the campaigns in Virginia from Clinton acolyte Terry McAuliffe. Look, the conflict of interest on this stuff is just remarkable. Honestly, you are the person who gave your wife cash is the subject of your investigation. I'm sorry, I'm saying that wrong. This one's saying it backwards. The person who gave your wife cash is running against the person you're investigating. Recusal would not be a bad idea. I mean, just from a stylistic standpoint, just looking at it from that standpoint, recusal is not a bad idea. I'm just saying, this looks bad. And the fact that these guys have a clear bias in the way that they've been operating looks bad. The fact that they didn't reveal the stuff to the FISA court looks bad. It looks bad. And yeah, if they're saying that this is misleading for McCabe's testimony, they should release McCabe's testimony. One of the things I want to say, because going back to the FISA thing for a moment, 37,000 requests, 8 were unapproved. Out of 37,000 requests, for the government of the United States to completely ignore your Fourth Amendment rights, 8 were approved. 8 were unapproved. It's a rubber stamp. Hey, I have this ham sandwich. Somebody said that it looked at this guy in the wrong way. Fuck it. I trust you. You have an honest face. I trust you. I trust you. Yeah, that's amazing. That is amazing. All right, so I am not going to hold this one too long. It's just, I don't like this. Look, I'm a lefty. I don't like these power centers and the way that these power centers operate, particularly when they're completely unaccountable. Where's accountability for something like this? This stuff happens in the shadows. How would the judge even know that the person didn't disclose all of the information? I mean, I'm extraordinarily cynical of this process. 37,000 requests, 8 not approved. For them, all intents and purposes, whatever they tell the judge just agrees with and allows it. So, yeah, this is not good. All right, I'm not going to keep this one too long. Wow, it is almost 10 o'clock at night. All you guys are here. But that being said, though, I have to say, looking at this, looking at the document itself, and you're looking at the information that's in it, this looks bad. And I'm saying this as somebody who don't like Donald Trump. But to be fair, I don't like the way the intelligence system or the surveillance state is set up in this country either. So, I don't necessarily have a dog in this fight. Whether it's Trump or not, I don't like the way this has been arranged. That's all. I don't like the way they've been able to... You understand that they can do this to anybody. Anybody. Like, any random thing. They made the choice to surveil Donald Trump's campaign. Donald Trump's being wiretapped, and they laughed. Everybody laughed and joked him. Oh, that idiot. He's an idiot. He's a carnival barker. They were wiretapping his campaign. And they were wiretapping his campaign on the premise of something that was unsubstantiated, that was, by Comey's own testimony, salacious and unverified. And yet, it was the basis of that Russian investigation. And they've stuck with this investigation, screamed at the top of their lungs about stuff that's going to come out and all this other stuff, and they found nothing. And we find out that all of it is based on this. It's amazing. Please do another 420 tonight. Oh, Brom, what's up, man? What's up? I don't know if I'm doing 420 tonight. Maybe. I don't really have a topic. Now, I had a... The topic yesterday was because I had just came across one of my subscribers. What is his name? Jeff Koons, I think. He sent me a video of George Knapp. George Knapp was having a conversation with Cameron. But they were going, and Hal Puthoff. He was having a conversation with Hal Puthoff. That's what it was. It going over the new stuff that's coming out. Hal Puthoff is part of the thing with Tom DeLonge. That stuff's so weird, man. It's like a fucking rock star dealing with NASA physicists, with consciousness research and UFOs. It's so bizarre. It's so bizarre. The market is due for a correction. The market dropped 600 today. Wow, that's fucking amazing. They'll be okay. They'll be perfectly okay. All right, I'm going to end this. I'm getting tired. Brom, thanks, man. I appreciate the contribution. It helps a lot. In case I missed somebody else's super cash, I apologize. I try to pay attention to those. Sometimes when I'm doing the videos, I can't necessarily see what's going on. But if I miss, I apologize, and I thank all of you guys who contribute. Much appreciated. Much appreciated. If you guys enjoy the content, feel free to share, like, subscribe, and of course, you can always support through Patreon. Thanks again, Brom. Have a good one, guys.